Okay, folks. I'll just get down to our own area. Happy days. We then need to open this and re-enlarge it. Right, let's get the show on the road. So we're into week three, or technically week four, but week three for yourselves. Did you all get a chance to have a look at the design thinking um,
Yep.
lecture thing? And I know you might, as you're reaching towards the end of it, you might say, "What's he talking about? Two concepts? Where is he going with this stuff?" It's That's a fairly generic one. I didn't edit out absolutely everything, but it was a generic presentation that I do with a number of modules. One of the other modules I use that for is entrepreneurship. And you will see hints of this tonight, references to entrepreneurs. And the first and most important thing, as I said, to even to the undergrad students when I'm talking about these specific topics, is that it's not about the guy or lady that has this brainwave and starts up a company in terms of entrepreneurship. We use a more generic understanding of the concept of entrepreneurship as being the idea generator, the person who spearheads an initiative. So entrepreneurship, and we have this other phrase they have, and the cuckoo land, and get into intrapreneurship and all that sort of stuff. But basically, it's someone that's thinking and looking at opportunities and so on and so on. So while we're still in this strand of innovation, I said I'd take this particular slide about recognizing opportunities and generating ideas from it. Because likewise, we use the same type of approach when we want to solve problems. So you can augment this with the design thinking methodology. And then you have a pretty broad ranging set of tools that can help you to help the way you think. And that's what fundamentally this is all about, the way you think and pick up on things. So we look at some of the objectives here that we want to try and cover as quickly as possible tonight. Why it's important for to start a new firm or come up with a new idea, its window of opportunity. And one point that I will say that there's nothing worse than a good idea that's badly timed. And God knows we might have all, I certainly would have had that ill-fated experience in organizations many years ago. But it happens at times, that either the organization isn't ready, or you're too a little ahead of your time, and so on and so forth. But timing is absolutely critical, particularly when you're dealing with people and bringing people along on a particular journey, whether it's as a project or whatever. And then we'll explain the difference between an opportunity and an idea. Describe then three general approaches that entrepreneurs use to identify different types of opportunities, and look at the four environmental trends. How this then will border on some of the strategic management processes that we use, and the macro environment, and that would be the likes of the stuff that you're exposed to on the 6 o'clock news and so on. So what's happening all around us, what opportunities can be influenced by the general environment, society, and so on. But we'll have a look at that. Often referred to as your PEST: political, economic, social, and technological. Some people like to expand that into LE, which would be legal and environment. But again, each to its own. Look at the personal characteristics that make some people better at recognizing business opportunities than others. And it's not just business opportunities, but any opportunities. So we can drop some of these words and take a different perspective of this presentation and recognizing ideas. There are 5 steps in this kind of creative process, which means that I won't be showing you the other steps that are the other slide deck that's in there, so we can keep going at pace. But this is generic enough for you to adapt. The purpose of brainstorming gets used as an idea generator. I'm quite sure most of you would have used brainstorming at some stage or other. It's pretty straightforward. and look at the library, internet searches, and research to generate business ideas or solve problems, explain the purpose of maintaining an idea bank, and then describe 3 steps for protecting ideas from being lost or stolen. Avoid the magpie manager. Have you ever? Are you familiar with that concept, the magpie manager? No. You have the magpie manager.
Public service, you'd be familiar with it, all
Well, actually, this is quite I won't say the opposite, but it happens wholesale inside in the private sector. That's where I would have experienced it. So you have the magpie manager, the Teflon manager, the hourglass manager. There's a few more of them. They don't write about these inside in books for obvious reasons. Oh, that's very disingenuous. Oh, that bullshit. But the magpie manager is exactly as the magpie. You bring them ideas and or suggestions and so on, and nothing happens. And maybe 6 weeks or 6 months or a year later, geez, that was a great idea the boss had, wasn't it? They're shuffling them away and plagiarizing in academic terms, but hijacking your ideas and so on. The Teflon manager quite clearly is as is. Nothing sticks to them. They get away with murder most of the time. And the hourglass manager, everything is funneled through the manager upwards and back downwards. They have to install themselves as that break between staff and senior management and so on and so on. But anyway, they exist. But as long as you know they exist, you can do something or a lot about them. Trust me, it's great fun. So what's an opportunity? Favorable set of circumstances that creates need for a new product, service, or business, or an opportunity itself, and or to solve a problem. So a favorable set of circumstances. Time being one of them, luck being another one of the circumstances, and of course the rest are predicated with having the skills, competence, resources, and so on. So when you have the perfect storm for developing an opportunity, you have to watch out for it. So we look at some of the basic qualities of what these opportunities might possess. Are they attractive? And are they timely? Are they durable? Will they last? And then anchored in a product, a service, or business, and that can add value. Now, the important point here is, irrespective of the other 3, durable, attractive, and timely, and assuming those boxes are all ticked, is it adding value? And that's where, when we if you're doing this from a business perspective, you'd write a business case. And essentially that's what you will do inside in project management anyway. Justify why we're doing this, why we want to launch this product, develop this system, change that process, organizational change, the whole lot. It has to add value. Why would you not do it? Why would you bother doing it if it wasn't adding value? Technically, that's not 100% correct, because you might do something that's not adding value if, for example, you were in some kind of a not-for-profit type of organization. You wouldn't necessarily be adding monetary value as such, but you might be adding human value, training people up and so on and so on. Durable, that the opportunity can has longevity, that you can build on it and so on, and of course timely. There's no point in coming out with the early days with Blu-ray DVDs if you didn't have Blu-ray DVD players. So getting the timing right is important. And of course, is it attractive? Will people buy it? Will they use it? And if they find it attractive, of course they're going to spend money, and then you're going to make money out of it or get profit out of it. Or if it's a process that what's the attractiveness of improving the process is higher efficiency, which contributes to higher profitability or more effectiveness and so on and so forth, opening up other opportunities. So observing trends. So the ways we generically look at identifying opportunity. And I mean, really, it's developing the skill of walking around with your eyes wide open, essentially. And ideas will come from can come from the most unusual places. So again, observing trends, solving problems, they can generate ideas in terms of how you solve the problem. Could be a design thinking methodology, but it also could be create an opportunity that if we solve this problem, this particular way, maybe we could adapt that into the process of how you solve the problem could also be used to generate a new product or new ideas and so on. You might be using bits and pieces of the design thinking mixed in with a little bit of brainstorming and maybe a little bit of root cause analysis, all of these, and you come up with a nice slimlined version of a system that the company could roll out and then use for solving problems and new ideas as such. Remember, just because they're in the books and just because they're laid out in that format doesn't mean you have to stick with them. That's the whole point about it. That's my whole reason for oftentimes living is taking those prescribed ideas and say there has to be better ways or different ways and more understandable or more effective ways of doing things. You don't have to do every step per se, but as long as you have some level of calculated risks and blah blah blah, it will work. Then finding gaps in the marketplace. Now let's explore one or two of these. Looking at the trends, the economic, social trends, technological advances, political action and regulatory change, and so on. So it's these are what's known as the macro environment, and in strategic management, it's one of the first steps in your environmental analysis. And we look at what trends. If you take social trends right now, the buzz is renewable energies, save the climate, all that sort of stuff, and so on. And the social forces behind that, I won't mention her name. I will not hurt my vocal cords, but you know who I'm talking about. Those kind of social forces will influence companies because companies respond to this and say, well, let's be seen to be doing the right thing at least, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, they are, much and all, we may not agree with them. If the trend is strong enough or if the social force is wrong enough, we can't ignore it. So corporate social responsibility would be the umbrella that would provide the guidance for us to comply to this, that, and the other thing in terms of how we do our jobs. The more recent buzz would be we refer to it as oh Jesus, God. Circular economics, Jesus. Circular economics, traceability from ground to consumption, back to ground again, that type of thing. So we look at this concept and say, can we now design better products, and the way we design them, the raw materials we use, the components and so on, that can be easily undone and reused. That's the basic concept of the circular economics. And of course, then we have political action. So if you look at these environmental trends again and look at economic forces, so if you take here the state of the economy, well, right now, according to the news, our economy is going to grow by 15%. Yippee. Strip out all the multinationals and we're in the region of around 5%, still healthy. But nevertheless, it gives an indication of what's happening. How long will it last? Now, the timeliness of all of this, is this just because of post COVID and people have a few bob to spend, or is there can this last longer as such? So it seems to be dispelling this belief that people had gotten used to saving money over the last year and a half, and even the central bank have been identifying that more people are withdrawing than depositing, which is a fair indicator that people are on a spend trend. So it's an economic environment that we're in at the moment. So consumer spending patterns, we can see that's being improved. Levels of disposable income, that will be skewed by the fact that people are spending savings at the moment. So when we come down to our pure disposable income, and that can be affected obviously by the likes of taxation, we'll know all about that in the next week or two, property taxes and so on and so forth. So those types of things, plus fuel costs have gone up by over 20%, this, that and the other thing, they're all impacting levels of disposable income. And you're not getting 20% pay increases, I'm quite sure, in your salaries to compensate for the 20% increases in utility costs, and so on, so on. So, income is being impacted, no doubt about it. So, and then if we look here, so the social forces, trends, demographics, what people think is in, as I say, at the moment we would be talking about climate change and green agenda. They're probably top of the list as such, renewable energies and so on, so on, so on. But these are social forces. How valid they are, it's a whole other discussion. But nevertheless, we're looking at something that's a much broader concept, the future of the planet and all this sort of stuff. People have bought into it, same as the anti-vaxxers and the vaxxers have bought into their own beliefs. And nevertheless, it gets out there on social media. And I specifically mention social media because that's one of the biggest propagators of information dissemination or otherwise. But nevertheless, it's a very powerful tool, and that's what causes makes these social forces more evident. Then technological advances, emerging technologies, new uses of old technologies. Well, again, I'll come back to the same one. That as we begin to see it roll out, 5G. It's an emerging technology. The applications are going to be, fantastic when we look at this, in a couple of years' time. What we'll do with the data? What kind of data are we actually collecting? Because we have a more efficient way of collecting and transmitting the data. So that's one possibility. Will we see holographic images on our mobile phones, for example? Is it inconceivable? No. The technology is there. Is it interaction? Can you interact with it? Yes, but it's not you can't produce it at affordable costs. It's very high-end technology. But eventually we will be able to see. And is it new? No, it isn't. I mean, Jesus, when they introduced the euro, 30 odd years ago, give or take 25 years ago, I can't remember, they used a holograph to show the euro spinning around in front of all the delegates and so on and so forth over in Brussels at the time and all that sort of stuff. But the technology is there now to be able to touch that and make it interactive, already there, but not at a general consumer level. You will see come back later on that there are niche uses, so you might find that in very high-end research areas where you can interact with holographic images to produce results and so on and so forth. That's very niche. Very expensive, but very niche. And then so new changes in political arena, new laws and regulations, where we see those coming at us left, right and centre, primarily from Brussels, rules and regulations. And all I have to mention is Brexit and look at the impact it has on, have there been opportunities? Yes, many people, and COVID created more opportunities simply because companies started to go more online as such. Nevertheless, there are opportunities. Do we take them or not? If you didn't take them, you could be in trouble. So the business product service opportunity gap, the difference between what's available and what's possible, fundamentally, and that's where we take advantage and exploit those gaps. That's how quickly we see these and react to them. That's what keeps businesses in business and generates new businesses. That's fundamentally what this macro environment shows us. So if we look here, drilling down a little bit further, a weak economy favors startups and helps consumers save money. We're not in that kind of a situation. We're kind of back to the opposite direction. And that's, in those type of firms, they have this thing, GasBuddy or Compare.com and so on, where they can help consumers save money on the utility bills. And then we take next advances, and as I said before too, that some guy comes up to your house at 6 or 7 o'clock in an evening and sign the dotted line and you change your electricity bill. So the barriers to exit are much smaller. Another one of the strategic management concepts, the barriers to entry and barriers to exit. Changing your mortgage would have been a big barrier a number of years ago, because you had to get a solicitor and this, that and the other thing, and it cost a small fortune. Now it's they'll give you money back and they'll do all of that for you as part of their competition. So making it easier for consumers to operate. The trends, aging of baby boomers. That'll be my brigade. Jesus. And that's the problem. we're living we're living too long, and but is that a problem? It is for you guys, and that's why I want you to study hard. I genuinely mean this. I really want you to study hard on these subjects, and pass these exams with flying colours. Because what that will mean is that it creates opportunities which no doubt will come your way to advance your careers and your professions. And commensurate with that will, of course, be a salary increase, undoubtedly. And as a consequence of that, you would be paying more taxes. And the beauty about that is it will be paying my pension and keep me in a standard of life that I will have become accustomed to. I give that speech to my undergrads, and you should see their faces drop. But the whole point about it is fundamentally, yes, you have the baby boom, but the opportunities are clear. As us people are getting older, those of us in our 60s are pushing up towards the golden handshake day, or whatever you want to call it. We're living longer, we're staying fitter, and so on. And prediction was 2050, Ireland in particular would have 2 people to 1 person in retirement, 2 people working, supporting 1 person in retirement. Unsustainable. Not a hope in the world is that sustainable. What do? Government policy. You go back to the previous slide in terms of the economic side of it, or regulation side of it. Increase the pension age, and so on and so forth, which are remove the mandatory 65, which they have done, which is fine. But also, from an opportunistic perspective, there are phenomenal opportunities in aged health industry. So it's I don't know if any of you were involved in that area and so on, but yes, and I'm not just talking about the bricks and mortar. I'm talking about the technologies that such organizations are using to enable mobility, to enable people's brain alertness to continue and function more effectively, and getting longer years out of people. Increasing diversity of the workplace, that's pretty clear in terms of the we've become far more much more diverse in Ireland in the last 30 odd years, in particular. Networks such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. It's not so much the interest, but now it's a way of life for many, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you use those systems. Focus on health and wellness. And I mentioned to you before, mobile phones have moved from just simple communication devices now to 2 primary areas, and the one that has a slight edge on it is as a health device, health and entertainment. They're the primary users of your mobile phones, and after social media stupidity or stuff. So increasing interest in green products, and when we talk about green products, it's just compliance and sustainability and reusability and carbon footprints and all that sort of stuff. So those kind of social trends that are impacting the way we choose ideas. So if you come up with any idea today that is environmentally friendly or reduces the use of the number of trees and from the Amazon, and if it's some kind of I don't know, waste product that you reconstituted to make look like a mahogany table and so on, you run a winner, because you'll capitalize on that concept that this is a renewable, easily disposable, blah blah blah, and it doesn't require trees from the Amazon region. And taking extremes now. So in this case, we'll look at technology, so computer internet, biotechnology, and digital photography. I mean, in the late 90s, digital photography only started to raise its head. Who uses film now? Probably no one. But it has moved on, the quality and so on, and what we can and can't do with digital photography. And almost any of us can now get on and use very advanced film and photo editing software and improve the image that we already took, which would be probably discernible to most human eyes in terms of quality and pixelation and so on. So again, once technology is created, often products. So when you have look at all the industries are businesses that were created around your mobile phones, the cases, the waterproof things, and all that sort of stuff. Your selfie sticks. You know, poke someone else's eye out with one of these things. But that's the all those, and that's what it's alluding to here. You know, once the technology is created, you have all these adjacent or in economic terms we call them complementary products. So if you have shoes with laces, then you have to have laces, you know, for the shoes, and the shoes are no good without the laces, that kind of thing. Complementary products, and this is the same kind of thing now. But they're not critical to the use of the phone. But we have all these other bits and pieces going on, and industries have created around these elements. And political action, you know, the laws to protect the environment created opportunities for entrepreneurs to start firms that help other firms comply. So you literally have what was this one Tom Parlin said this morning, that you have to have a is it a compliance officer or something like that. He was talking about on the interview when we were talking about the MICA up in Donegal, or he was at least, and he said most large building or construction sites now are required to have one of these compliance testers, and so to make sure that the quality of the products coming in meet regulation and so on. And that only came in the last 10 years. Not every place have it, because the question was, should the Construction Federation not be footing some of the bill? And as he pointed out clearly, he said, we are only the developers. That falls under the remit of the quarry industry, which is fair differentiator. But at least there are mechanisms in there, apparently, to stop repetition of those kind of situations. And then companies created to help other companies comply with specific, so you know, the No Child Left Behind Act in the States, for example, and you know, just helping kids improve. So again, it would be a not-for-profit type of organizations, but nevertheless, you're spawning all these adjacent or parallel type opportunities, industries, businesses, based on a simple act. There's, what was the company down in Shannon, EI, the is it Electrical Instruments or something like that? Correct me. They exploited an excellent opportunity in France about 8 years ago, I think it was. They got wind that there was legislation was going to be introduced on smoke detectors being mandatory in homes in France, and had to be retrofitted. They saw the opportunity, and a couple of their guys got in on the act and got into the likes of Carrefour, and you know, cleaned up, as the man said, thereafter. So again, you're not just looking at your own immediate environment, but there are opportunities, you know, across Europe, across the globe, and so on, and laws change. So there could be similar laws happening maybe in Italy or someplace else, but it could take another couple of years. So you watch the space, and you have to be constantly evaluating what's happening out around, and that's what we talk about, environmental analysis, keeping an eye on what's happening elsewhere. Is there a push towards what do you call it, smoke detectors in these other jurisdictions that are is moving at a faster pace? And it could be a case of a particular political party getting in and saying, this is now high priority, we need to legislate for this, and so on. So things could move. The timeliness of ideas, and even with existing products. So a second approach to solving the problem is US firm, in this case, using your solar panel type approach and alternatives to fossil fuels. So, you know, taking the social forces, move away from fossil fuels, go solar, regenerating, and so on and so forth. So this company then solved the problem by just creating these panels and as such. Now, no, I'm not getting into the rant about the climate changers up in Dublin last weekend, the secondary school kids, and you know, no fossil fuels for the future. Really think it through, kids. You know, it's not you, obviously, but the kids, think it through. They've probably got a lift up from their parents from the back end of nowhere to demonstrate, and then get a lift home. You know. Anyway, don't rant, Mark. Don't rant. Third approach, finding gaps in the marketplace itself. So when we look at what's happening is there an opportunity in on a particular product. So a gap in the marketplace often created when a product or service is needed by a specific group of people but doesn't represent a large enough market to be of interest to the mainstream retailers or function manufacturers. Now, that might be the case with some technologies today, very niche, high-end types of technologies. So, one example was Alienware in Athlone. And I mentioned this to you before, I'm quite sure. They had a very, very niche market. Gamers, PC and laptop gamers, and these are expensive bloody machines, to say the least. Now what's happening is, what Dell did then was, when they took over Alienware, they used and rebranded some of their products to these XPS machines, and you probably came across them, more so for the business segment of their market, and then made them more generically available for the rest of people when they saw that there was interest coming from the general population and so on. So it's a perfect example of that type of situation where you had pure market niche, very niche, and because some of these gamers will spend 10, 15, 20,000 for a whole rig setup type thing just to be able to immerse themselves in games. And you're looking at desktops 3, 4, 5,000, that kind of thing. Now we take the same technology, and now what's happening is there's a morphing of that gaming technology into video creators and YouTubers and bloggers and all that sort of stuff, and particularly when it comes to film editing and processing, all about speed and so on. So those gaps in the market are being filled by existing products, slightly changed. If you're in the PC into PCs and so on, you can change obviously components and have them specially built and so on. But you're looking at 2,000 plus for a half decent machine to perform. If we look here, product gaps in the market represent potentially viable human or business opportunities. So this company or this girl, Tish Sarovolov, created guitars for women. I don't even know what they look like, but suffice it to say that it obviously had some kind of aesthetics or look about it that made it a little bit easier for women to play. Would you recognize one if you saw it? I certainly wouldn't, but saw an opportunity. It's like, it would be like manufacturing scissors for a left-handed person. Not the guitar. People see these opportunities, and some left-handed goods shops, for example, they do exist, and it's only when you're faced with the issue or the problem, if you're left-handed, why can't this be done in this format and so on and so forth. Then you realize that there are gaps in the business, and that's how many of them spotted these ideas, depending on the type of products they want to use. So moving on to the more important things, the characteristics of the idea generator. Firstly, prior experience, cognitive factors, and social networks and creativity. Now, I haven't briefly looked down through these. Prior industry, it does help. Certainly, when if as I said, when we'll look at this in a little bit more detail when we look at the project management element of it. But if you're in the construction industry as a project manager, technically you have project management skills. You can budget, schedule, plan, and cost out projects and so on. So you know that you have the skills, you have the piece of paper to say it. Does that mean you could come in and run a software engineering project? Probably not, because you don't have industry experience. Could you come up to speed? Probably, but the skill sets are not easily transferable between different industries. So it does help, certainly when you're looking at solving problems or generating new products or ideas, that you're actually coming from the industry itself. Now, some would argue, and quite justifiably, that not coming from the industry gives you a fresh set of eyes. But for that person, with those perceived fresh set of eyes, there can be an extremely steep learning curve such that they feel competent and confident working in a whole new area or new arena or industry as such. So just what, as I said, the lean is to have someone that knows the industry as or comes from the industry. Now the cognitive element here we talk about here, this sixth sense, referred to as entrepreneurial alertness. It's your gut. You have a feeling for something. The ability to notice things without engaging in deliberate search and so on. So you do get a gut feeling of how things are happening. That's the sixth sense. And biologically, this does exist. There are some papers being written about this, that your gut feeling is another system that's connected to another part. It's like a second brain for all intents and purposes. So when you do have that gut feeling, it can be, and if you trust your gut, generally speaking, you're going to be proven right as such. But that's the same thing, if you spot trends or you think this is happening, but you don't quite have the knowledge or the reason or the absolute data as to why this is happening, and it causes you to go off and look a little bit deeper into, well, why is this, what's happening in this space, why is this kind of gelling with me or triggering certain ideas and so on. That's what we're alluding to here, your cognitive ability. In leadership programs, they refer to it again as cognitive ability, and our cognitive awareness. Have you got the sense to pick up on signals and things that are happening outside your immediate environment as such? Then you're the usual. So all I'll say about social networks is, again, they're extremely powerful. Now I'm talking about your professional social networks. I'm not talking about face slapping thingy, yoke and Instagram and TikTok and all that sort of stuff. It's the people you've built up relationships with over the years in the different jobs and roles that you've worked at and so on and so forth, or in professional engagements and so on. And as I said, there's a great little expression: your network is your net worth, because oftentimes you'll rely on your network to help solve a problem or generate ideas and so on, and that's what this is essentially saying. On a more formal level, we might have it on our LinkedIn. You might have 1,000 connections on LinkedIn. The chances are that all of them, or a fraction of them intimately, would be quite slim. Nevertheless, it's the computer version of what we would have built up over years and many years of interaction with people and so on. But it is powerful. It really is powerful. And knowing the right person, because not always will you have the answer, but equally and sometimes more importantly is knowing who to ask and how quickly you can find information, data, or an answer to solve a problem and so on. That's where the network becomes extremely beneficial and powerful. So, I would always advocate, build your network as much. In the good old days, it used to be the old Rolodex and your names and the numbers, or your stack of business cards that you would have collected at over the years and so on and so forth. Now we just make mental note of all of these. We'd have them in our phones. So, and then a strong tie versus weak ties. So really, when we're looking at the nature of ties, are they people, like-minded people, working in the same industry, that have share the same passions and the same interests and so on and so forth, within the same organization, even co-workers, as they mentioned here, friends, spouses and all this. So these would be the strong ties versus the weak ties, people who are not in your immediate circle, that you might meet, acquaintances that you might meet, infrequently as such, but equally both can be as important or as effective as the other. Just be careful on the strong tie environment, because sometimes you can get up and fall into the trap of this group think. And because you're all of the similar backgrounds, similar passions, similar interests, and share the same enthusiasms and so on, you can become blinkered to some critical information or facts or situations that might be, could have a detrimental impact on your project. In other words, we become blinkered. It's, if to put it another way, if you went to your immediate family and said that you're starting a business and you're going to make Hurleys and all that, you'd be told, "Jeez, you're a great bit of stuff, Mark. Fair play to you. Off you go," and so on and so forth. You might get the odd one, unlikely, to turn around and say, "Oh, why would you bother? They're already there. There are people making them. Don't waste your time." We tend to not want to go the negative route with immediate family members, but that can be a trap. That's why when I'm talking to entrepreneurial candidates and so on and so forth, ask people that you don't know about your idea and your concepts and so on and so forth to get more genuine feedback. And that would be, in this case, the weak tie relationship. So if you want to bring it into your companies and so on, ask the guys around you, but also ask maybe other departments or people in other departments that you would at least have a working relationship, and say, "We're thinking of trying this out down in that department. What have you done anything like this before?" And so on, so on, in a weak tie relationship. But before you even get to that situation, you should already be including these people in cross-functional teams, particularly if it's going to affect something in the organization, change of process, new product introduction, new service, and so on. You will have cross-functional teams, which again we cover inside in the project management side of things. And then the creativity process of generating the novel or useful idea. All again we should say about this is that's the eureka moment. That's the creativity element. Something happens between you or within the group, or this spark of something nice, a great idea has started. Now, is it realizable? And the action part of making that realizable is the innovation. So here again, we have the 5 steps for generating ideas. The eureka moment, the business idea, the problem is solved. We go down through these kind of steps. Now, the insight that we get into this, so we have you come together as a group, you throw out ideas, you're tying around, you're using the brainstorming techniques, and then something flashes in or emerges through the process, and then we go off and we start to evaluate, will this actually work? Now, you might not get past that stage because, no, it's not practical, we can't do it, it's not technically doable, time, blah, blah, blah. So you're evaluating, or maybe it gets past the evaluation stage or phase, and we elaborate. Then in this case, what we do is start saying, right, we potentially have a runner here of a solution. Now let's dig a bit deeper. That's all the elaboration is. But we actually do these processes. Sometimes these happens in milliseconds in our own heads. Quick in comes an idea, and then say, I've an approach how to solve this, and here's the brain spark, and boom, and here's how we're going to do it. Other times it'll be taking years. I know some of the guys solving mathematical problems in Oxford. The astrophysics lab and the physics lab kind of is a curved wall, and all their whiteboards are outside their offices, and guys could be up there working, or a guy could be writing a formula upside there trying to solve the problem or the meaning of life or whatever it is, some astrophysical problem, and next a crowd will gather, and they're all putting in their inputs and so on, and they might leave it hanging there. And some of those problems will be going on for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's certainly outside my capacity to see how could you be still trying to solve a problem, mathematically after 40 years and so on. So, but that's why they're over there and I'm not. And so we elaborate on the ideas, and we look at in a business context. This elaboration might mean including a business case, setting out the project. So we have the idea, we've come up with a choice, we've whittled down the potential solutions or the new products. Now, are they feasible? Let's elaborate on these. Put a business case together. When? How long is it going to take? When can it be reduced? When we're going to start making a return on investing on this idea as such. And then we have the full view of the opportunity recognition process, and that's just the same diagram here, kind of pulling all of the elements we just spoke about there earlier on. If you look, social factors, technological advancements, political, interacting with the personal characteristics of the person, pull all those together, and you have either a business, a product, or a solution to a problem, service opportunities gap, difference between what's available and what's possible. And then we go out and say, yep, at the end of all of this, when we checked all of these, gone through the checkbook or the check boxes for the pestle, the macro environment, then we see the internal, the more micro environment, we come up with possibilities, we see opportunities, and then we go and evaluate it and say, yeah, this is a new product, this will sell or it won't, or this service will work or it won't. That's all that diagram says. The techniques, you would be familiar with brainstorming, you know about focus groups, and I'm quite sure the rest is pretty self-evident. Library and internet searches, and usually, if I'm doing a piece of research, I'm down in the bottom box first. Clearly, I'll scan the internet, and do we use the library? No, I'll look at case studies and case libraries and so on, just to find out information. But the problem with the bottom one, this one down here, is time. It's so easy when, as you know yourselves, I'm quite sure you would have experienced it, and I know you will experience it when you're doing some parts of the assignment and so on. You can be dragged down rabbit holes, and that requires discipline to be able to come back up and say, well, no, interesting, like to read about that topic, but at a later stage, it's not really relevant. But knowing what is relevant and not relevant is another discipline to allow you not to be sidestepped or distracted down into spending. You could spend hours, days before you even come back on track with what you're supposed to be looking for, and finding stuff that's directly in relation to what you set out to achieve in the first place. So for example, if I wanted to do a bit of research on knowledge management systems, it can easily bring you off down into action learning and experiential learning and all these other areas, and throw in these other concepts, and it can be difficult to pull back. Sometimes it doesn't do any harm to take some of the rabbit holes and say, well, that's interesting, I wonder, could I use that here? So then the speed at which you can go down and come back becomes an issue. So it's not just about avoiding the rabbit holes or the dead ends, but allowing yourself to go down there to bring yourself back and possibly bring back a gem or not. Am I confusing it enough? But essentially, discipline is required. The other stuff, the brainstorming, again, you're working with teams, your own team, your project team, work colleagues, and so on. Focus groups, that more so when you have some tentative solution or problem and so on, then you might actually use focus groups to see, would these be really interesting? Or the flip side of it might be, we need to work on aged health. We want to come up with some ideas for better use of Zimmer frames. Can we make them collapsible and turned into something else? Product, or walking stick into a Zimmer frame. I'm exaggerating, of course. So you might actually need to talk to people who use those products currently to get their feedback before you even waste the energy on going off and trying to create a walking stick that can fold out into a Zimmer frame and be strong enough, and would people then really, you follow me? So you can have it as the starter and as the end, bookends in terms of validating the idea, coming up with the idea, or validating and getting feedback. And the fundamental here is getting the feedback. But remember, we're talking about here, you can also use your design thinking, put yourself in their positions, and then see, would this work or not? What kind of issues could arrive? You solve a lot of those problems before you even go out to the group and say, yeah, we've put ourselves in your position, this is what we come up with. Does this work for you or not? The brainstorming, this just goes on to explain the different uses and techniques and says, these groups, for example, are led by trained moderators, and that absolutely is the case. The reason why you have trained moderators is to include various people. Some people will be shy by personality type, some people will be extroverted, and so on. So trained moderators know how to get the best out of people and know how to keep the focus going on a particular area and not let it digress too much, and so on. They talk here, between a gathering of 5 to 10 people and so on in a group. That'll be about the norm of focus groups. But you might repeat the activity many times to collate as much information, go away, analyze, and oftentimes we video these type of sessions as well, because that can give you some serious insights as to, people might be saying one thing but they're feeling something else, or their body language is saying something else. So we need to garner as much information, because you could be looking at investing considerable money and time and effort into a new product or service or whatever, and you need to get it right. So we need to thoroughly analyze the feedback we're getting from people. The library research that I've already talked about, well, yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know how many people would physically use libraries nowadays, because most of the stuff is available online, even the libraries themselves. I'm not just talking about going interwebbing it on Google and all that sort of stuff, but we can physically go in onto libraries, and look at articles, look at soft copies. An awful lot of books have been digitized, so we can look up parts of it and scan them and so on. So we can be far more efficient in library searching as such, as opposed to just raw Wikipedia or Google and so on. Large public university libraries, here are some of the examples, and Mintel is quite good. But even AIT, their libraries online, and a lot of material is available in soft copy. Most publishers now have all their books digitized, and you don't have to buy the whole book. You can actually buy chapters inside the books. There was something came up on it was actually the day before my 50th birthday. I was over at Aston University over in the UK, meeting up with McGraw-Hill and a couple of other publishers, and they were getting a presentation from Johnson, Whittingham and Scholes. These are three of these well-known strategic management book writers. They collaborate quite a lot. There are probably about 20 or 30 editions of the book out now at this stage. I can't remember. And one of the biggest complaints from the UK lecturers, and there was only two of us there from Ireland, was that students will not buy the books. Now you're talking about the usual thing, the size of the Bible kind of thing. As I said, if you ever want to impress anyone inside in academia or in a third level institute, walk around with a strategic management book, turn backwards, back page, and walk around and giving away all the secrets. But that's how they do it. But those books, the issue was the students wouldn't buy them, therefore would they release the platform? And they did. And it's remarkable the technology that they developed around those concepts of single chapter releases, and then the likes of making the books more interactive, and developing test cases, and then case studies and questionnaires. And you can now actually develop your whole program like this, for example, by taking selected chapters, content, and so on, packaging it together on their platforms, and then you just link your Moodle page to it, and you deliver it then from that context, and it's highly customizable. So it's come a phenomenal distance, particularly in the last 7-8 years in terms of availability. Internet searches, as we said, targeted searches are also useful. So if you're starting from scratch, simply typing new business ideas into the search engine will produce links to newspapers, magazines, articles, and the hottest new business ideas. So you do get, and of course, don't forget, you'll always get inundated with the ads first, and so on. So you're having your now even with internet searches, you can be far more efficient and clever you can use some software. I know one piece of software I used was Copernica 2000. That was the original name, but anyway, and I would be looking for a particular concept or I think at the time I was looking for, road mapping and technology. And this would go off and scan 20 or 30 different sites simultaneously. But it also had the ability to synopsize whatever it found, the articles and so on. And then I got a report and it gave me the link and said it spoke about technology road mapping in this context and so on. So I was actually doing it for my own master's back in 2001, 2002. But it just meant I could let this run in the evening, and then when I came home to do a bit of work on it, here I had the report, so I can be far more efficient and so on. And extremely beneficial when I was doing my project management elective module on it as well. I was looking at certain methodologies that I wanted to incorporate and support or interlink with the Canadian industry, timber industry. Tell you another time. That's the use of the internet as such. And then, of course, other techniques, customer advisory boards, feedback from customers, listen to what they're saying, their complaints, their whatever issues they're having. Another great source of inspiration, so to speak. Day in the life research, spending time down. They talk about anthropological type of research, but I mean, when I worked with Meteor, we did exactly that. It was a requirement. If we were responsible for my department, I was head of products and services, and the idea was coming up with new ideas. And it was great to listen, and we had to go down, work on customer care day or two, and we do it every so often just to get feedback and see what are the issues our customers were experiencing, without going out to try and be a customer, because your biases will already kick in. Plus, you already know the technology. Therefore, you say, well, this is simple. This is how you fix it. But remember, not everyone has the same level of knowledge or depth of knowledge about your products or services. And it's always interesting to see people that might be struggling how to use it. How can we make it easier? And the whole name of the game, or the end game, was make it easy. They'll buy more of it. That's all. And we did this anthropological type of research. Basically, sit in customer care or sit in the faults department or the ticket office for a period of time and listen to what the hell's going on. And you also get more empathy towards your colleagues when listening to the stuff that they have to listen to as well. So encouraging new ideas, focal point for ideas. Some firms meet the challenge of encouraging new ideas, evaluating ideas, and so on and so forth. So if it's everyday job, it may be no one's responsibility. Now, what they're alluding to here would be the old traditional idea of suggestion boxes and things like that. We've kind of come a bit from that, to be honest with you. As I said, there are some companies actually encourage monthly meetings of cross-sectional, cross-functional teams, senior managers sitting around, and anyone has an idea, make a pitch. And that isn't new. Jack Welch was doing it with his GE conglomerate many years ago. So people came in with ideas, and he had a fantastic way of handling it. If somebody came in with an idea, we should buy this business, or we should develop this product, or develop this service, he let them make their pitch, and he almost invariably said no. And if you walked out with your tail between your legs, he said he knew that you weren't passionate enough to drive that through. And he said there were a couple of people who's come in and said, what the hell's wrong with you? I mean, can you not see what I'm trying to explain to you here? This is a real opportunity here. Your heads are up your ass, all this sort of stuff, blah, 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 blah. He said you could see the fire and passion in people. He said, and even if it wasn't a great idea, they were going to make it work simply because of the passion they had for the idea. And he said he had one guy come back to him a couple of times with new car air freshener smell. And some of the guys around said, it's the daftest idea, why would you want to do that? And he ran with it, which meant that all his car hire fleet got an extra 6 months to a year out of the cars that they were using for car rentals as such. So they were sweating the asses more. He said, a brilliant idea. He said, what, a couple of bucks for one of these things, trees hanging out with the new car smell in it. So passion and perseverance are important also, but having the mechanisms there to encourage people to take ownership. And I did say before that the one company I was exposed to, KCI in Athlone, the staff were trained with project management basic skills at the very least to be able to take ideas through once they presented them and so on. So encouraging creativity. We used to actually have a time out. In actual fact, I have 1 day a week which facilitates this type of stuff, and it's known as my research day. I don't know, and the rest of you in the public service, you know what I'm talking about, maybe. But it just means that I don't have lectures on 1 day in the week, which means I can spend time researching, going back over stuff, and so on and so on. And don't generally tend to use it just to do my admin work and all that stuff. I like to keep that, should I say, that day or most of the day ring fenced, so that I can get away from the normal run of things and try and keep the old grey matter moving. So then, protecting ideas, don't need to enhance this anymore. Patents and so on and so on. That's all they're alluding to here. So avoid making an inadvertent or voluntary disclosure of an idea in a manner that forfeits the right to claim exclusive rights to it. In other words, keep your mouth shut until you know what you're doing, and make sure that you have it locked down before you even say anything. And that's, oddly enough, that is one of the biggest challenges with people and ideas and so. How do you get feedback on an idea or a suggestion or a solution without giving all the data in front? And that's the trick in research. You know, how can you might be talking about some new feature, great feature in a car, for example. You want to introduce some new piece of technology. You might go off on a total tangent and talk about the technology in another weird or wonderful type of application that doesn't exist whatsoever, is totally not doable, just to see, are people biting at the technological concept itself? And then you apply it back in the car. That's a crude way of trying to explain it, but basically you have to be able to disguise some of the stuff. Tell them something, but tell them nothing. Does that make sense? Or as in our Irish expression, he's a cute old whore. He finds out more about you than you, and you say, geez, I've told my whole life story, and he's taught me nothing about himself, that kind of stuff, you know. So you do have to have that skill, and we do develop that. We do it through research methodologies and so on. How to get the information that isn't immediately obvious or available. And that's it, folks. So now, any questions? Comments, insults, jokes? Yeah. Okie dokie, folks. I will let you try and go and get a coffee then, and give you 10 minutes or so to wind yourselves up for the next module for tonight. And I'll sort out an assignment and we can go through it next week as it happens. Under the guise of being a technological university.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Big pay rise for you this week.
Jesus, it's time to duck for cover. Okay, folks, listen, take it easy. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you then next Thursday. God bless.
Thanks very much, Mark.
You're welcome. Bye bye.